In this video we'll be looking at the importance of cost, revenue and profit for producers. So we're going to examine different business objectives firms may have, profit maximization being one of them. Then we'll work through some cost, revenue and profit calculations. Finally, we'll explore why some business objectives may conflict with ethical and moral interests. Let's start off by looking at costs. Costs of production for businesses can be divided into two groups: fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that don't change depending on how much firms are producing. Examples of fixed costs include rent for office space, property taxes, and interest repayments on any loans a firm may have taken out. These costs remain constant, whether a firm produces 10 items a day or 10,000 items a day. Variable costs, on the other hand, are costs that do vary with the level of a firm's output. Delivery or shipping charges, costs of raw materials, and labor costs for workers on flexible hours contracts are all examples of variable costs. The graph here shows an example of what these different costs look like with respect to output. In line with their definitions, fixed costs don't change as output expands, so they remain fixed at some arbitrary level, £50,000 for example. Variable costs do increase as output increases, and this is why total costs also increase as a firm produces more products. Average costs are total costs divided by the number of goods being produced. In other words, they refer to a firm's unit costs of production, or total costs of production per product produced. If you know about economies of scale, then you'll be familiar with the long-run average cost curve. This illustrates what happens to a firm's average costs in the long run as output increases. To start off, average costs fall due to economies of scale, then they reach this minimum point called the minimum efficient scale, after which long-run average costs rise due to diseconomies of scale. I have a whole video about economies and diseconomies of scale on this channel, and you should find a link to that in the description. Revenue, also known as turnover, simply refers to how much money a firm brings in as a result of selling goods or services. It's calculated by multiplying the quantity of products sold and the price they are being sold for. Like average costs, average revenue is total revenue divided by quantity, and from the equation above you can see that this is just the price of one unit of a product. Profit is essentially the money from a firm's revenues that is left over after all costs are deducted. Most firms want to maximize profits, and they can do this in two ways. Either they can increase their total revenues by selling more products, or they can reduce total costs by streamlining the production process and minimizing expenditures where possible. Setting higher prices can also increase profits. Since total revenue is equal to price times quantity, increasing prices will, ceteris paribus, increase revenues. Again, assuming all other variables are held constant, this will lead to higher profit levels, giving firms access to more funds to build new production plants to expand output, and this could have the secondary impact of increasing revenue and profits even further. Now we know about different types of costs and revenue, let's go through a typical question. Here we have a firm that produces pies. We have some limited information about revenue, costs and profit, and our job is to fill in the table. Pause the video now if you'd like to do this yourself. So looking at this table, I'm trying to find cells that I can fill in straight away. I know I can immediately fill in the total fixed costs row, as we know that fixed costs by definition do not vary with output. Next, I can work out sales revenue from the last row. As revenue equals price times quantity, we can divide revenue by quantity to find the price of a single pie. £3,000 divided by 150 equals £20. We can use the price now to work out sales revenue for the second and third rows. Again, revenue is price times quantity, so revenue at 50 pies a week is £1,000, and revenue at 100 pies a week is £2,000. Next, let's take a look at total variable costs. We're assuming here that variable costs vary linearly with output, so as I double my output from 50 to 100, variable costs also double, from £500 to £1,000. Similarly, as output triples from 50 to 150 pies, variable costs triple from £500 to £1,500. Of course, variable costs are £0 when there's no output. Now that we have fixed and variable costs, we can work out total costs, as total costs are just the two added together. Finally, profit is equal to total revenue minus total costs, so we can use the data from columns 2 and 5 to work out profit at all quantities. Here's another sample question. Again, pause the video now if you'd like to try this out yourself. Part A was asking us to calculate the firm's total revenue at each level of output when the price of each pizza is £25. Total revenue equals price times quantity, so applying that calculation for each column gives us these answers. Part B asks us to calculate the firm's average revenue at each level of output. Average revenue is total revenue divided by quantity, so we can use our answers from Part A and the output data from the previous slide to get these answers. Finally, Part C asked us to work out the firm's profits at each level of output. Profit is total revenue minus total costs, so we can use our answers from Part A and the total cost data from the previous slide to get the following answers. So the pizza firm makes a loss producing 20 pizzas, breaks even at 30 pizzas, and makes profit after that. There are many business objectives different firms may choose to follow. I've listed 4 here: profit maximization, profit satisficing, sales maximization, and increasing market share. There are many more business objectives I haven't covered in as much detail, such as non-profit motives and revenue maximization. Profit maximization is where a firm determines the price, input, and output levels needed to maximize profits. Essentially, a profit-maximizing firm configures all of its production activities to maximize revenue and minimize costs. After all, for a company to thrive, it needs to make profits, as those profits allow a firm to survive in the market and invest more in research and development to improve the quality of the goods and services being produced. One example of a company that maximizes profits is Apple, which recently had its most profitable quarter ever, racking up $28.7 billion in profits in the last quarter of 2020. Profit satisficing occurs when businesses are making just enough profits to satisfy investors, shareholders, and the ambitions of managers. This doesn't necessarily mean that profits are being maximized. This means that every business decision being made does not serve to maximize revenues and minimize costs, but is made to achieve an acceptable level of profit for all stakeholders in the business. Sales maximization occurs when firms try to sell as many units of a good or service as possible without making a loss. This is usually done with a long-term objective in mind. For example, each sale of a Windows operating system has a low marginal cost, as the technology has already been developed. Selling an extra operating system isn't going to increase costs very much at all. Therefore, by maximizing sales in the short run rather than maximizing profits, Windows has been able to attract brand loyalty and market share. This has allowed it to release other products such as laptops and cloud computing services, and it may be trying to maximize profits on these products instead. Linked to this, another business objective is increasing market share and building brand loyalty. This enables a firm to maximize profits in the long term. Amazon is doing this with its Kindle range. It makes an estimated annual loss of $500 million on Kindle sales, but makes an estimated $2 billion profit from the apps, books, movies, and music sold alongside the Kindle products. This strategy has allowed it to reinforce this brand image of being the cheapest place to go for online shopping, which it definitely is benefiting from today. There are other objectives as well, such as non-profit or not-for-profit motives. These can be linked to ethical considerations we'll look at in the next slide. For example, AstraZeneca, a major vaccine producer, has said that it would sell its vaccine to developing countries at cost price, showing that it doesn't want to profit off of the pandemic. Let's now look at some moral and ethical considerations firms make. Being morally and ethically responsible means different things for different stakeholders. For workers, it means providing fair pay and good working conditions, and maybe even adequate training opportunities to promote personal development. For suppliers, it means paying fair prices for raw materials and paying invoices on time. Lastly, for consumers, it means offering high-quality customer service, not misleading customers by providing accurate information about the contents and specification of products on packaging, and offering goods and services at affordable prices. It may seem that abiding by moral and ethical considerations comes at a cost for firms in the form of lower profit levels. However, there may not be as much of a trade-off between corporate social responsibility and profit maximization as you think. This is because being ethically and morally responsible as a firm can actually lead to higher profit levels. Firstly, offering higher wages to workers makes them more happy and motivated at work. This can increase their productivity, lowering average costs of production, and so increasing profits by reducing total costs. Providing good customer service could attract loyal consumers. Such consumers may be willing to pay more for a firm's products because they know they'll be treated well if a good or service they buy is faulty. This can increase profits by increasing total revenue. Finally, ethically responsible businesses are likely to have better brand images than those that have a negative impact on the environment, for example. This could sit well with investors, making it easier for a business to attract investment for business expansion, allowing it to produce more products, increasing total revenue and profit levels. So hopefully you can see from this that ethics and profit aren't mutually exclusive, and this is an evaluative point you could make if you're answering a question on business objectives. We've reached the end of the video now. Here's a news article and some accompanying questions related to the importance of costs, revenue and profits. Thank you very much for watching.